Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into, a really ambitious concept, a detailed multi-decade plan for global unification.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at this document. It's called The 50-Year Pathway to Global Unification, an engineered roadmap. And it's not just some vague idea. It lays out a four-phase, 50-year strategy, the goal, a unified, borderless, democratic world government, all based on what it calls federal cosmopolitan principles, basically trying to blend global unity with, local autonomy.
And what's fascinating here is how it frames itself. An engineered roadmap, that's quite specific. It suggests a very systematic approach. And it even mentions anticipating and using global crises, climate, security, whatever, to push things forward faster. So it's not just waiting for change. It's kind of planning to leverage disruption, which is, well, a pretty bold idea.
It really is. So our mission today is to pull out the key bits from this plan, help you get your head around the overall journey it maps out, from the early steps right through to the really big endgame stuff. We'll try to cover the big picture and some of those, frankly, surprising details. All right, let's start at the beginning. Phase I, foundation and normalization. This covers the first 10 years. The main goal here seems to be laying the groundwork, culturally, technologically, making global governance seem plausible, maybe even desirable. So first up, education. It talks about rolling out a standard global citizenship curriculum in schools, online, trying to build a sort of shared identity. And then there's this idea of prototyping democracy, like
Right.
setting up global citizens assemblies, GCAs, for people to discuss things globally, though not bindingly at first. And also launching a world parliamentary assembly, an advisory one, with delegates appointed by national governments initially.
And that prototyping is really interesting, isn't it? The strategy seems to be about normalization, getting people used to the idea of global participation, making it feel less alien, more normal over time. These GCAs, even if non-binding, they give a sense of involvement, right? Building familiarity, maybe trust. It's a gradual approach.
Yeah, easing people into it. Makes sense. Then there's the tech side in Phase I, development of a global digital ID, voluntary, secure, on a decentralized platform, like a future digital passport maybe, but not run by just one government.
That decentralized aspect is crucial, trying to address privacy concerns from the outset.
And borders, they call it border softening, starting with regional free movement zones, kind of like Schengen in the EU, and a global talent pass, too, for visa-free travel for certain groups, scientists, professionals, students.
Showing the economic benefits first, perhaps.
Yeah.
Making the case through tangible advantages for some.
Exactly. Demonstrate the upside of more openness, starting regionally and with specific groups.
It's a very deliberate, step-by-step process in this first decade, setting the stage.
Right. So after that decade of groundwork, the plan moves into Phase II, institutionalization and integration. Years 11 to 25, this is where the real structure starts to get built, moving from ideas to actual legal and political frameworks. Here's where it gets really interesting. And crucially, the document points out this phase likely gets triggered or accelerated by a major global crisis: climate, security, economic. It explicitly factors in using such an event as a catalyst.
Yeah, that's a striking element. If we connect this to the bigger picture, deliberately leveraging a crisis for planned societal transformation. It's quite different from just, reacting to events. It implies a very proactive, maybe even opportunistic approach to governance evolution. Makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does.
Okay.
So imagine this crisis hits. The plan then calls for a constitutional convention, elected delegates, experts, all coming together to draft a constitution for the federated Earth. And this constitution would define the powers based on subsidiarity. So decisions made at the lowest possible level. Global stuff stays global, local stays local.
But getting that constitution ratified,
Yeah.
wow. The plan sets a really high bar. A dual majority
Right.
needs approval from 75% of nation states. And those nations have to represent 75% of the world's population. Think about the logistics, the politics. Getting that level of agreement, that's an enormous challenge in itself. How would that actually work?
A huge diplomatic mountain to climb, for sure. Assuming they manage it, though, Phase II then empowers new global bodies. That advisory World Parliamentary Assembly, it becomes a directly elected, bicameral world parliament with actual binding legislative power.
Binding power.
Yeah, over specific global issues defined in the Constitution: climate, pandemics, oceans, that sort of thing. And the UN Security Council, replaced by a veto-free Global Security Council,
Veto-free, that's significant.
commanding its own professional peace and disaster response force, plus a supranational environmental authority with real enforcement powers for managing global commons.
So we're moving from talking shops to actual global governing bodies with teeth. Binding laws, enforcement. That's a fundamental shift away from traditional national sovereignty as we know it.
Absolutely. Which leads us into phase three, consolidation and economic reengineering. This spans years 26 to 40. The objective here, finalize the integration, get rid of remaining borders, and really reshape the global economy towards equity. So economically, it proposes things like a global financial transaction tax, a unified corporate tax system, and reforming the IMF and World Bank into one single global development fund, democratically governed, focused on sustainability and poverty reduction.
The implications there are just huge. Global taxes, centralizing the big financial institutions, it really doubles down on shifting power and resources. It's aiming for a massively integrated global financial system where global goals drive funding, a major change to national economic control.
And then comes probably the most dramatic step, border abolition, formally abolishing all remaining national borders for human movement. Just gone.
Wow.
And to handle the inevitable shifts in population, they propose a global integration fund paid for by those global taxes to help communities adapt.
The sheer scale of that, open borders globally. The economic potential is one thing the document probably highlights, but the social, cultural, logistical challenges. Managing global migration on that scale, ensuring fairness, preventing chaos. It's almost beyond comprehension. You'd need incredible foresight and resources.
It's hard to even visualize, isn't it, the sheer complexity.
Right. And while the integration fund sounds good on paper, how effectively could it manage the real-world friction and adjustments? That's a massive question mark.
Also in this phase, global disarmament, phasing out all weapons of mass destruction, limiting national armies just to defending their own territory. And the new world government gets sole authority over any offensive weapons capability.
Complete centralization of major military power. Again, that requires an unprecedented level of global trust and verification, a total restructuring of global security.
Okay, deep breaths. We've reached the final phase. Phase 4. Optimization and flourishing, years 41 to 50. The goal here is basically to use this fully unified system to tackle the really big planetary problems and create shared prosperity. So you get things like planetary restoration. The supranational environmental authority launches huge projects, reforestation, ocean cleanup, biodiversity recovery funded by the new global economy.
And you can see how that builds on the earlier phases, right? You needed the unified authority from phase 2 and the global funding mechanisms from phase 3 to even attempt something on that scale. It shows the logic, how each phase enables the next level of ambition.
Exactly. And then there's distributive justice.
Yeah.
The idea is that the economic benefits, the surplus from open borders and global efficiency gets channeled into something like a universal basic dividend.
Or a global safety net.
Right. A strong global social safety net, with the stated goal of basically ending absolute poverty worldwide.
That's the ultimate expression of the economic reengineering, isn't it? Not just global markets, but global equity is a core aim. Systemic poverty reduction through redistribution. Implementing a global UBD, the practicalities, the funding, inflation risks. The document must assume its unified system can manage all that.
It paints a picture of a highly optimized system, which leads to the final point. Democratic safeguards. The plan emphasizes that by this stage, the checks and balances are fully operational. The World Parliament, the GCAs, an independent global judiciary, a free press, all working together to keep the world government accountable and responsive. So what does this all mean? We've just walked through the 50-year pathway to global unification and the scope, the level of engineered detail. It's really something else. Just to reiterate, this deep dive was about exploring what's in this document, the proposals themselves, not endorsing it, just understanding the plan it lays out.
Yeah, and what stands out is that methodical, almost clinical approach. Planning for crises, leveraging them. It's a fascinating, if perhaps slightly unsettling, look at how someone might conceptualize long-term, large-scale geopolitical engineering. Really makes you think about the nature of planning versus, well, history just happening.
Absolutely. So, a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. As you think about this 50-year journey, which phase strikes you as the most ambitious, or maybe the most concerning, if this kind of plan were ever actually put into motion? What do you think would be the absolute biggest hurdle to even getting started down a path like this? How might the world realistically react if step 1 actually began? Something to consider.